If you're driving right now, keep your eye on the road. If you're home alone, maybe turn on a light because tonight we're cracking open a plague pit, a ghost town, and a kind of horror that doesn't just jump out at you, it waits. This is Zombiepalooza Radio Live, and I'm Jackie Chin. And tonight, my guest is an indie horror author who lives where apocalypse, conspiracy, and human desperation all smash together. He is the mind behind Stokebridge and the Horseman virus, and stories where survival isn't heroic, it's brutal. Eric Woods, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jackie. Thank you so lot for having me.
What'd you think about that intro?
Very good.
All right. Okay, so let's get into it. I want to start at the beginning.
Sure. Absolutely.
Let's get a little bit of a bio on you. Kind of things you do, maybe outside of writing. Give us a little bit of kind of like your hobbies that you like to do, and then get into why we're here.
Wow. Outside of writing, do writers do anything outside of writing? I don't know. It's hard. I'm an avid reader. I've been pretty much a bibliophile my whole life. So I love reading. I love exercise. I love dogs. Other than that, I'm pretty simple introvert. Likes to well, yeah, I like to write. So if I'm not writing something, I'm usually editing or reading.
What broke you first, your sense of safety or your imagination?
What broke me first? Probably my sense of imagination. I have always been a storyteller. I've always loved coming up with creative new worlds to write about or to talk about. Even if it was just telling a little story in class when I was in grade school, I always loved coming up with new ideas, and the ideas were usually pretty morbid in nature. And this is coming from someone who
letters. Did you get a lot of letters written home?
I probably should have because I went to a Catholic grade school.
I
But
love it.
Usually, though, they said I was very creative and just to watch it a little bit. So who knew?
So I guess this next question is kind of like a duh, but were you a horror kid early, or did horror find you later? I think it might
Early.
have been
It was very early. I'm gonna say I was, gosh, 10 or 11 in that area when I was first introduced to the 80s slasher genre, Friday the 13th and Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, all those slasher series that were so popular. They're even popular today. And I was just in love with watching those movies. And looking back, I'm trying to figure out why was it because I wanted to be scared. I just thought I kind of liked seeing the bad guy get beat in the end, which is usually what happens. But I always loved the scary stuff. It was, and I had a lot of friends who were the same. We all loved watching horror movies. There would be a bunch of us that would spend the night at someone's house, and we would spend the night watching horror movies. That's just how it was.
I miss those days.
Yeah, I do too.
Do you remember the first thing that you wrote? That first thing that made you think, I may be onto something?
Oh my gosh. The very first thing I ever wrote was in third grade. It was a short story about a Martian. I don't remember a whole lot about it, although I think I still have it buried away somewhere. But that was kind of the moment I thought, ooh, this is kind of cool. Maybe I might want to do something like this, more of. And then as the, grades 4 or 5, 6, whatever, and we would always have the short story assignments, and I would just come up with some of the most weird, bizarre ideas. And I had no problem reading it in front of class. I was kind of a quiet kid growing up, but when it come to reading short stories in class, I was all about doing that.
All right, I got you. Everything alive starts with DNA. When you look back at that early work, can you see the DNA of the stories you're telling now?
Oof. maybe tiny bit, but not a whole. I mean, I wrote a lot of what I thought was horror, and a lot of them were patterned off of horror movies. I would take some of those themes and use them, and I always use my classmates as some of my characters, so it was always fun. But I've looked back on some of those and go, well, I wonder if I've got something here. Maybe I can modernize this story. And I've looked through them all. And I'm like, no, these, these are very much middle school writings. But at that time, I thought they were great, and maybe they kept me going because I kept coming up with these new ideas, and I wrote them down. And even if I didn't write the full story, I always thought it was kind of cool that I could come up with the ideas. So I think maybe coming up with the ideas that's kind of grown with me. The stories themselves, I don't know if I'd ever show anybody any of those stories I wrote in grade school because bad.
They're supposed to be, though.
Oh,
That's how you know that you're going to be a writer or a creative. They're
right.
supposed to be hideously bad.
Yeah.
And then you move along and you're like, hey, maybe, I don't know.
You learn to get better at it. Yeah. You
All
learn to be
right.
a little more like, okay, this maybe not work, but maybe something like this will work. You just keep progressively getting better. Just don't give up on doing it. That's what I say.
So you did it and you moved into the indie horror grind. You
I
didn't
did.
come up through a big publishing machine. You
No,
chose the indie road,
I did.
which
I
is
did.
basically Mad Max with laptops.
Yeah, that is a very, very accurate way to put it. I, I, when I first, I mean, I was writing for years, and then I didn't write for several years, and then because I was having trouble coming up with anything. And then when I finally came up with a plan on how to get through a novel, because I'd started, there's planners, there's pantsers in the writing world. Planners will do an outline, character sketches.
Throw
They'll
it
outline,
out. Go do
yeah,
it again.
yeah. They'll have every chapter ready, and then there's the pantsers that'll just say, "Oh, I got an idea. I'm going to start writing right now." And I used to try to do that, and I would get stuck, 2,000, 4,000 words, and I'd be like, "I have no clue where this thing is going," and that'd be it. And then I finally thought, maybe if I can come up with an ending and work backwards, and then come up with a beginning, and then just kind of figure out what do I want in the middle. I mean, you could always change things around, but if you get that outline, you get that structure, it gives you something to work with. And I thought, oh, this is good. And so I challenged myself to write 500 words a day on this idea for a novel that I had. And I kept a spreadsheet. I'm kind of OCD that way. And I kept a spreadsheet. I said, here's the dates, 500 words, 500 words. Did I get my 500 words? And pretty soon I was doing 1,000 words, 1,500 words. Some days I wouldn't do any, but then I'd get back to it pretty soon. And before I knew it, I had written a book that was about 117, 118,000 words. And I was like, wow, now what? I have
What
the
do I?
book. What do I do now? And you start hearing these, well, if you want to get published, you got to write a query letter, then you got to get an agent, then you got to get this and this. And I'm like, I'm not the patient person that likes to do that kind of stuff. I just kind of want to get it out there and see what if people like it.
Yes.
And I started learning about, print on demand and the self-publishing, indie publishing, which I was not familiar with at the time. So it took about 2 years after the first draft was written before I had finally figured out that this is how I can upload the book. This is how you upload a cover or the cover for the book. This is how you got to measure if you're doing your own cover. See, I hadn't learned
Ugh.
going
And
to
how they wrap around and how
oh,
they
it
put
was a
the print on there and how to that is
that was
nightmare.
frustrating. So if you go to an author
Done
or
it.
a
It's
cover
awful.
designer, cover designers are godsends. Oh, I love the cover designers that I have because they know exactly how
Give
to
me a
get.
shout out since we're there. Give me a shout out for
Well, I
either one or more of your cover
well, my
designers.
cover designer, I go through an organization called getcovers.com,
Got
And I
it.
think it's different people that work on them, but they've worked with me enough that they kinda have an idea. But they'll every time they send me something back, it's always wonderful, at least the start, and they have as many edits as you want. You just kinda give them the specs, the ideas of what it looks like. It's a personalized cover, and if you want something different, you just tell them, and then they'll send it back to you, and you can do that as many times as you want until it's completely done.
All
And
human
it's
done?
yes. Oh, yes. No AI at all.
Okay, let's bounce on that. We're going to bounce on that a little bit later because I want to hear more about how you like discover how to get the right um okay, so in essence you're world building, right?
Correct. Correct.
So it's a lot like doing a role playing game.
Correct. Oh, yeah, yeah, very much.
And you're starting from this blank slate, and so that cover, the colors on the cover, the characters or the scene on that cover needs to be to spec so that when the person gets that, they're going to look at it and go, damn, it looks amazing, and it's rich in color and rich information.
Mhm.
Talk a little bit about the importance of that for your worlds to be presented.
Oh, yeah, the cover is means everything. I've had book signings where people have come up and just said, the cover drew me in. I have to see what this is about." And more times than not, they will buy the book that they saw the cover that was just blew them away. So your cover has to incorporate the theme of your book somehow. It doesn't have to, but you don't want it to be too busy. Okay, you don't want to
Right.
have too many colors. You don't have too many people, too many items. You just want it to be a good, solid representation of what your book is about. And then they can turn it over, read the back, and as long as you have a good synopsis, then that's how you draw them in.
What's harder, surviving your worlds you write about or surviving indie publishing and your audience? Ha
Oh my gosh. Surviving indie publishing isn't horrible right now. I mean, because we can kind of do that's a good thing about indie publishing is we can kind of do whatever we want to do.
Yes.
We can publish when we want. We can publish what we want. We can re-edit books that have already been published if we want to. We can change the covers if we want to. I've done that before. So indie publishing has not really been. There's a lot of people out there that are indie publishing, but I don't see them as competition. I love reading other indie authors. I think they're wonderful, and I love supporting other indie authors because I know what we all go through, um, from the writing to the editing to the marketing. I mean, there are some people out there. I mean, that probably do so much more than I do. But it's so rewarding when you actually can get that physical book that you can hold. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
it's so amazing. And then that was probably the proudest moment was when I finally had that first proof copy in my hand that had my name on it, my title. I'm like, oh, it's a bucket list check off.
Yes, absolutely. Let's see. If a new horror writer asked you, should I go indie? What would you say? And in what way would you say it? Would you say it kind of like, oh yeah, it's a good idea, or damn, do it?
Well, I would wanna know more about what their expectations are. Are they looking to be the New York Times bestseller list or the USA Today bestseller list, or they want the fame of the Stephen King, Grady Hendrix kind of thing, or do they want to just get their work out there for people to read? Um, because it's 2 different worlds here. Because if you wanna go traditional, you're gonna have to get an agent. And then your agent's gonna have to want to publish your book and want to get a publisher for you. And then you're gonna have to wait because, I mean, from my what I've heard anyway, again, don't quote me on this, but what I've heard is once your book is accepted from a traditional publisher, you're looking at about 18 months before it's going to be published, or 12
What
to
he
18
just
months
said,
maybe.
what he just said, listen to that because that is the norm.
Yeah. So for me, I'm always like, "Oh, I don't have the patience for that." So, but if you have the patience and you wanna do it, go that route. You get into more probably get into more bookstores. I would go that route, but for indies, you retain the rights to your material. If you go traditional, they own your book, and they can make changes to it if they want to. Now,
Yes.
I don't know if they can change the entire book for you. I think maybe just edits possibly. I haven't looked as much into that, but I do know that, you basically are signing your rights to your book. Now, you're probably gonna get more exposure, maybe some more royalties. I have heard you also still have to do your own marketing, which I'm kinda like, "Huh, really? I thought that's what they were doing."
So
But
let's get into the marketing aspect of it. You have
mhm.
a number of places, and I do mean a number of places, which is super coolio, to have your personal kind of essence, so to speak,
Right.
on social media. So let's talk a bit about the importance of building your brand and using social media to do that.
Oh, yeah, social media
Ah,
ha that is an indie author's best friend. It has to be. You have to find, not only find your niche, but you have to find, y your people. You have to find your book community, Bookstagram, or Book Talk, whichever you wanna say, depending on the social media, you know, that you're on. I'm on almost all of them. I've got so many, different ones, but you really need to just reach out and communicate with other authors, with readers. You need to not only put yourself out there, but show a bit of the human side of yourself as well. You don't want to just go on your social media page and promote your book every day. That gets old. I don't want to do that for mine because I don't want people saying, "Ugh, he's promoting his book again." No, I'm gonna put a post up about my dog, which is fun. I love doing that.
we get to see
Um,
your dog a little bit later.
yeah. He says he finds himself in a lot of, situations where he may not wanna be, yeah, featured, but, I love showing him off. But, yeah, I just love showing the human side as well, and that's what you need to do because when you're trying to gain an audience, you're also trying to make friends with these people, and I really and genuine friends. You don't wanna be fake, and because people can tell. They can tell. And, I seek out other authors. I seek out people who I know are readers. Um, I follow them. Sometimes I connect, more personally with some than others.
Well,
I've
it's
made
going to
some
be it's
incredible
the
friends.
genetics of writing. It's the
Mhm.
DNA. It's the
Yes.
if you have that same kind of frequency, then you're going to hit real well. But
Right.
if you don't vibe with that person,
Mhm.
then it's
Correct.
it's going to feel extremely awkward, and then it's going to be way more difficult.
Right.
So
It is.
yeah, find
So
your
it
people.
you gotta find your people, and you gotta make sure don't take advantage of people, when you're on there, because there
Ooh,
will be people who
yeah.
they will send you messages, "Hey, can you share this?" And then they'll do it if you get the wrong person, and they'll start sending it to you every day, and then it's just like, "Okay, come on,
Yeah, please don't
little
do that.
much." That is not something you wanna do. I will share thing if someone, like a new author would send me something that says, "Hey, I got this new book coming out. Can you share it on your page and your stories?" Absolutely. I will
Sure,
do that. I love doing that. A lot of times I will even read the book that comes out if it's kind of down my wheelhouse. Um, it's when they start, you start, like I said, you start getting those daily uh messages to do that, and it just starts becoming a little over the top, so you gotta be careful with that. So I say don't be afraid to reach out, but just don't take advantage of the people who are kind enough to, help you out. 'Cause we're just doing it because as indie authors, we know what it takes. We know how hard it is
yes,
to get
yes, we do.
eyeballs. We need some new eyeballs on our work. And and it doesn't even have to be in your genres, because maybe some, people who didn't know that they might like your genre will see it and go, "Oh, I'm gonna follow this person," and just kinda keep an eye on it.
For
So
sure.
it's a long a tedious process, but it's so worth it. I mean, I got on Instagram back in, oh gosh, 2015, 2016, but I really didn't take advantage of the indie author side probably until almost 2020. I mean, when COVID hit, um, I was sent home from work for to work from home for several months, and that's when I really started building these new connections on social media more than I had, because I really didn't know much about it, and probably should have, but I did. Once I started seeing these other authors, I'm like, ooh, this person is doing this and promoting it this way. I should start thinking, you know, in these terms as well. I need to start figuring out ways to market that are a little more than just, "Hi, here's my book." You know,
Right. We're gonna
so
jump to another topic.
sure.
Someone with whom you have an affinity for, that you have a high regard.
Hmm.
He says in his book on writing, kill your darlings, even when it breaks your egocentric little scribbler's heart. Stephen King.
Yes,
Kaboom.
yes, I agree. It's hard to kill your characters off, especially the ones you know your readers are going to love, but you want them to have the reaction of, "I can't believe you just killed that killer character off. I can't believe that character died." Because to me, that says you're invested in the story. You are so into the story that you cared about this character that you didn't want to see this character die. I actually, on my first book, which wasn't even horror, by the way, but there were characters who died. I had some beta readers who read it before it was published, and one of them messaged me like in the middle of the night, "I can't believe so and so died." And at that moment, I'm like, "Got it. I got it. That it's working." And that is the reaction I wanted to get. And that's the reaction that all writers, you see these memes that are out there like, um, you're not going to kill off so and so character, are you? And then there's a little evil smile from the writer's face because, you know, no, in a horror, especially horror, no character is safe. Not even the main character.
No!
Not even the main character. You can now I love I don't wanna say happily ever after endings so much as satisfying endings.
Yes.
I don't wanna piss people off with the ending. Like, oh, you're gonna kill someone at the very end, and they'll be like, "Okay, that's a do that." You want an ending that's gonna be satisfying, even if it's not, "Oh, everyone survived and the bad guy died and blah, blah, blah." If it just needs to be it needs to make sense with the story that's been told. It needs to work up to that point, and the reader needs to be like, "Okay, that makes sense, I get it." Even if so and so didn't survive or you don't know if they survived, if you're, writing a series or something, but you need to leave the reader at the end wanting more.
Your stories often deal with collapse of systems, towns, even morality. What do you think that says about the world you personally grew up in?
Well, the world is a very, very unforgiving place. I've seen that my whole life. I I try to see the best in people and situations, but that's not always reality. And I think a lot of my writing is me jumping into this other world to get out of reality and then forming an ending that would be more satisfying than maybe some of the endings that I've experienced in my own life.
Do you believe horror reveals who we are truly when we're stripped of comfort and rules?
Maybe. I think a lot of it with horror is just enjoying the scare. I think everybody who writes horror writes it for different reasons. People just love to come up with scary stories. Some have that inner demon that they just need to get out, and writing does that. It's such a release. I have a little bit of all of it. I've written uh, whole novels that was when I was in a very low point. It really pulled me out because you get to get out of the real world and dive into this this creation that you've made, this whole different universe, and you're kind of in control of that universe. Now,
Yes.
sometimes the characters kind of take over, and I know all writers have said that will say the same thing in some of their books. They're like, I didn't expect so and so to be doing this. This is not what my outline said. It went completely off the rails. I don't know. And
I
that's
love
another
that.
thing with that. That's another thing with outlining. If your story starts going in a different direction, just go with it.
I
You don't
get,
the
yeah,
outline is there for you
absolutely.
to reference, but if it's going in a different direction, a better direction, just go with it. Let
I
them
get,
take you on the journey.
I have a little bit of a journey. I have a little short video I want everybody to see. Here we go. I like that. Bam! Let's talk about it. We're going to go and shift over to the second segment wall, and we're going to bring over some photos. There we go. Let's move this over here. Whoa. Where did where did everything go? Oh. This just shows you I don't know what the heck I'm doing. There you go. How about that?
There you go. Yeah.
Let's talk Stokebridge.
Stokebridge, yes.
Let's talk Stokebridge. It's a
All right.
ghost town. There's
It is.
government secrets. There's a creepy feeling that whatever happened wasn't an accident.
Right, right.
Give us a little bit of a background for those who are going, oh, what is this?
Okay, well, the name Stokebridge was actually the street I lived for my first until I was like 3 years old. I always loved the name, and I always thought that's kind of a cool name. I wonder if I can do something with that someday. But anyway, I always wanted to write about a haunted ghost town. I had an idea 20 some odd, 30 some odd years ago, and I started writing it. And then I saw the movie Phantoms by Dean Koontz, and I thought, oh, this is really close to that. And so I kind of abandoned that idea. But I always kind of still wanted to write a haunted ghost town. But I like to write, if I'm writing in a trope, I like to add a little twist. It's the one reason I have never written a vampire novel because I want something different. Everyone's done vampires. It's been done millions of times. So I haven't been able to come up with anything unique. Well, Haunted Ghost Town, not the most unique, but I thought, well, what if it's a haunted ghost town that has been wiped off the map as if it never existed, but physically it's still there? And I started thinking about, okay, why would it have been wiped off the map? And then I thought, because it was a small town, and one night, one person went around and murdered almost the entire town. And then it's like, well, why? What happened with this person? And at first, I wasn't sure. I'm just thinking, this is somebody that had trauma, or maybe this is somebody who was born just kind of a sociopath, and this is the way it was. And then I thought, well, you know what? If they're closing the town down like it never existed, there's got to be some government conspiracy going on here. So maybe there's a little background there. So I'm coming up with all these things, and I want to write this. I had the idea for Stokebridge, but I knew I wanted to write the prequel, which would have been 50 years in the past. So I started doing some research on what would a small town in the mid 1970s look like. Well, my girlfriend and I went to this want to say a fall festival or something, in a small town, but that had a lot of these old time buildings still up. So they had the old schoolhouse, the old church, a general store, a printing building, and I started thinking, oh, this is my town. And I'm writing all this stuff down. I'm taking visuals of what this area looks like, and all of a sudden, I had my town, and I started the background to the story was coming alive, and I thought, okay, now we got to get into why are people looking for this town? If it's been wiped off the map, how does anybody know about it? Well, of course, how are you going to wipe an entire town off? Well, they're going to pay off the survivors. They're going to get they're going to go into and change all that was a big thing. They changed the maps. They took the town off the map and as if it never was there. And we have this of course nowadays you have these paranormal ghost hunter groups that are all over the place, and I thought, what if there was like a group of ghost hunters and somehow they got wind of this story and they decided, okay, we're struggling here. We need something big. If this is real, let's see if we can find this town. And as it happens was like one of the first chapters, they're in school. There's a classroom of 10-year-olds, so that's maybe like third grade or something, and they had an assignment. They're supposed to go talk to a grandparent or an elderly person in their life and get a cool backstory. And this one child comes in. You can tell he's frightened. He's not sure if he wants to tell his story. Well, then he tells the story of a man named Morris Stanhope. And according to this boy's grandfather, he killed 200 people 50 years ago in a little town that isn't there anymore. Well, the teacher decides to contact mom and say, well, is he okay? Blah, blah, blah. And well, her nephew just happens to be one of these ghost hunters running this thing. And she goes, if you need something, probably shouldn't tell you this, but you know, there might be something here. You may want to here's some people you might want to look up, and here's kind of the bare bones of what this kid said. And you guys, if you can find anything, so be it. And it kind of just goes from there. We introduce this team of ghost hunters, and one of them is a former soap opera actor, so they have a little bit of popularity already because they've got a pseudo celebrity kind of in their group, and then they bring in a new camera person, and this girl is she's got some kind of background with this town. Now she's young, so she wouldn't have been alive when the town was there, but she's got some kind of connection to it. We just don't know what yet. And they just kind of go on this mission to try to find this town. And when they find this town, they pretty much figure out exactly why it was cordoned off by the government.
When you build a place like Stockbridge, do you map it out like a real town or let it evolve like an infection?
A little of both. A little of both. I knew where I wanted them to visit, but I needed a structure to the town as to where I needed to know that the school was going to be next to the church and that there were going to be houses. And then on the outskirts of town was going to be the auto shop. And then the general store kind of in the downtown area. So at first I just knew the places I wanted, but eventually it's like I kind of pictured the town, and I can still picture the town as it looks. I can picture where everything is located in the town, and because eventually you just kind of need to know that for the part of the story when you're in the town. You don't want to say, well, I went downtown to the general store and then say, well, I went to the south part of town to the general store. You want to kind of make sure it's in the same place. You want to be consistent. And I think once I got a visual of the town and I knew exactly what it looked like, it just made it so much easier to write the story from within the town.
Stockbridge, 1975.
Yeah, that is. And people have asked, can I read that one before the other one? And I say, and yes, you actually can read 1975 first, but you're going to kind of miss out on some of the aha moments if you read the first one before the prequel. So I would always say read Stockbridge before 1975. But if you want to read the prequel first, you can. It would not confuse you. But 1975 is basically what happened on that night. So it's like the first half of the book is about a month leading up to what this man was going through. So it's kind of got a bit of a psychological horror with it, as well as paranormal horror, as well as some serial killer horror. And then the second half of the book is August 1st, 1975, starting at midnight when Morris Stanhope's eyes open and he is on a mission to do what he's doing. With there is, and of course, there is background as to why he was doing what he was doing, but I don't want to give too much away.
Stoke extinction.
That was not initially one I kind of thought about a trilogy, but I knew at first I just wanted to write the first two, and I didn't want to write the third one until I knew I had a good idea. And I thought I gotta bring the two groups together. So the survivors from 75 who are still alive, and there were a couple of them, and the survivors from the first book, because they're having like these shared nightmares about the town. It's like the town, when you go into the town, if you're able to make it out, a piece of the town stays with you, and it's not a good piece. And they're having these nightmares about kind of an extinction level, apocalyptic level event that could be brewing. There may be more going on there than even they experienced, and they're just drawn. They have to go back and they have to finish. They have to finish off what was going on in that town. Again, without giving too much away, they have to go back and make sure that town is shut down because they know they figured out that the government is just scared to go in there. There's things that have happened that have caused them to not that they're wanting to protect people, but they don't want to go in there either. But
Right,
these
right.
guys, this group knows they've got to go and stop this before something even bigger that's been planned, possibly more longer than even 50 years, has been going on.
I have some rapid fire questions for you, and I'm going to
Sure.
put you on the big screen. And I know I gave you a little bit of a different kind of an idea how the lineup is, but things change.
Yeah, sure.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
Write at night or bleed into the morning?
Right at night, unless I want to do an overnight. Sometimes I want to do that, and I can sometimes make it until 2 or 3 in the morning.
One horror book you wish you'd written. One
Oh my
book out there that you wish you would have written.
I mean, the obvious choice would be Stephen King's It, but I'm gonna go with one I more recently read a few years ago, The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, because it's got so much 80s nostalgia horror in it.
A trope you're sick of. I had to
Uh,
ask.
honestly, vampires, you see them all the
Hey,
time.
dude! Whoa!
I
No!
mean, I love
That's a
them, I
little.
love them.
Ooh.
I love vampires, but I wanna see something different, that hasn't been done before. That's
Yes,
kinda my thing with it. It's the same old with
I know,
vampires.
right?
I want a
Absolutely.
new I want a new, um, thing with vampires, and no, they cannot sparkle.
Yeah, we don't sparkle, dude.
No, uh-uh.
Zombies, overdone or eternal?
Eternal. Zombies aren't my favorite trope, but I always like a good zombie tale because a lot of times they are different, stories. It's not always the same super flu makes people dead and then they come back to life. There's so many different styles of zombies out there that I think you can't really get tired of them because they're so much different.
What scares you more? Silence or footsteps behind you?
Oh my gosh. Silence probably when things aren't supposed to be silent. Footsteps behind me don't really scare me too much. Um, now footsteps on my roof, if in the middle of the night, that might bother me. But yeah, I think probably silence when, like I said, when it's not supposed to be silent.
If the world ended tomorrow, are you surviving or sacrificing yourself for the story?
Hmm. I might sacrifice myself for the story.
Cool, cool. Yeah, that was rather painless. All right, we're going to go over to where we're going to go at. We're going to go back here, and we are going to take a different section. We have other books that you have written, and I want to have a conversation about these other books.
Okay.
Give us a synopsis of The Man on the Roof at Midnight.
So when people ask me about this, I asked them a question. I said, what would you do if in the middle of the night you woke up and you heard somebody walking on your roof? And then you woke up the next night at the exact same time and you heard the footsteps on the roof. And then you looked and there was nobody there. But it kept happening every night. And then one night, you look to your window and you see a shadow forming, hovering over the window. That was the premise of The Man on the Roof at Midnight. So I started thinking this wild, crazy idea of it's a ghost story, it's a haunted house story, but the hauntings are happening on top of the house as opposed to inside the house. So what's the backstory? So you got to find a backstory for this ghost that's on top of the house. Why is this person there? So I kind of have a backstory of a man who just kind of faced a tragedy, lost his wife, his son graduated and moved away, so he needs to get out. He needs to move. So he moves to this town. He's a college professor, and he had a former colleague who had moved to this area, and he's helping him get a job. And he also was renting him a house, lake house. And he goes into this new house, and he starts hearing these footsteps at night. And he can't seem to figure out what's in there, what's up there. And so he and his friend are doing this research, trying to figure out where this is coming from. Well, at the same time, he meets one of his neighbors, a little off. She kind of tells him some things that just don't seem to be all that right. And it all kind of comes together as to it explains exactly why he's hearing these noises and who the entity is that's kind of hovering in limbo on his roof every night. Hell's Diner. That is a collection of short horror written by myself and my writing partner. Her name is Carrie Jane. These are a variety of short stories, my short stories anyway. A lot of them were written, one of them is over 25 years old, at least the initial. It was a story that I wrote when I was an undergraduate. It's gone through 10,000 different edits and reiterations, and I think I finally got it right. But some of them were written a few years ago. Some of them are more recent. And I'd always wanted to put a collection of horror stories together. And Carrie is also, she's written, most of her life, but she's never been published. And she loves horror. And I said, let's collaborate on a book. Let's put our stories into this collection. And I don't remember how I came up with the name Hell's Diner, but as soon as I did, I started thinking, I want the inside to look like kind of a menu, at least in the table of contents. So like we've got the book separated by hors d'oeuvres and appetizers and entrees and desserts. And of course, there's 13 stories because, 13. And so that's how and it's we call it our sampler platter because it's got so many different flavors of horror. There's a story in there about monsters. There's an apocalypse story. There's the old adage of the monster in the basement. There's a story about a zombie. There is actually a vampire story in there. Although I don't,
Thank you.
although I don't think in that story I ever actually say that the person is a vampire.
Whoa.
And
Okay.
that's probably my favorite one. It's called Prisoner Zero. It was also published on
Oh, I like
on an
that.
online magazine, but it's about how state of Maine abolished the death penalty back in the late 1800s, and somebody found that someone whose death sentence was commuted is still there. So that's how that story came about. And this
Very
this this
interesting.
grad student sees it, and he's doing a project. He's doing his thesis, and he wants to find out if this is real, and if it is, he wants to interview the guy. So yeah, kind of like Interview with the Vampire, only inside the inside a prison.
Eric Woods, welcome to Oblivion.
Ooh, this story goes back, oh my gosh, more than 20 years. This is one of my books that's based on a dream. So, from what I can remember of this dream, myself and someone else are wandering through this dark, dank castle, can't find our way out, and we keep seeing shadows that were disappearing. And that's about all I remember. And I initially started writing this as like a stage play, because I was into stage plays at the time. But it really, my vision for it was not something that was going to be done on stage. And so I didn't get rid of the story. I always loved the premise. And then it was, oh, when did I start writing this one? I think I started writing this one in 2019, because it was published in 2020 during the height of COVID. I think it was like end of September 2020. Because I was looking for another horror story to write, because I needed a new idea. And I went back to that and thought, oh, I always loved this idea. It's about this couple, and they're on vacation, and they're driving at night, and they get lost. And they've been driving for hours, and they haven't seen a sign. They haven't seen anything. And they're running low on gas, and they don't know what to do. And they see this sign. It's a little rickety wooden sign that says Oblivion with an arrow pointing to the right. They figure they've got to stop somewhere. They go to this, they find this. It's kind of a castle mansion, big place. They think it's kind of a haunted bed and breakfast, maybe. The door is answered by this man in a tuxedo who's just very eccentric. And they start seeing these, these women who are the servants there, but they all look alike. And it's just this really weird vibe. And they don't realize that it's basically a world of their nightmares. And once they're in for like the night, they can't seem to find their way out. And each room, they'll go into a room and there'll be a theme to the room. Like they'll have someone reading Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, but it's the same person they thought was there that took their bags, but she's wearing something else. And then they see another one so it's like, there's a vampire in this one, clones, ogres, just different creatures that are just around, and somebody who's been stuck in that place for over 200 years. So it's like a different world that they've stumbled upon, but there's actually more to it than that. The people who go there, who end up there, are sort of drawn there because of a certain ability or a certain thing that they have in their brain that draws them there. And the evil entity that's running that thing needs them. So this is probably my favorite backstory. 3 dreams that I had. This was back in 2022. They were so vivid that, at least 2 of them were, that when I woke up, absolutely woke up as soon as the dream was over, I had to write it all down. So the first one was myself with a bunch of strangers are in this kind of a dark elevator. Well, we hear screaming and arguing outside the elevator, and then a snap, and then the elevator crashes to the ground. And then the next thing I know, I'm looking around, and everybody's around me is dead. But then the next thing is we're all alive, but we're still in the elevator. But the elevator is now in this high rise. It's like in this penthouse, and there's a party going on in front of us, but nobody can see us, and we're calling out to them, and no one can say anything or hear anything, until one person on the other side turns around, walks up, and says, "This is how he collects them." And I thought, oh, that's good. I don't know where that came from, but I got to write that down. And then there was another dream I had where there's always shadows involved. I can't really see the people. I'm being chased by these shadows, but I have this sort of a telekinetic ability to move things. And so I'm moving boxes out of the way in this alley, and I'm moving this fence out of the way so I can get out. And then I wake up and I think, oh, I could do that. I wonder if I can really do that. And then I'm moving this glass with my mind that's sitting on my desk. Then I realized I wake up again for real. So I was like having a dream within a dream. And I thought, okay, how about if I give these people these strange abilities, but they can't really control them? They're kind of, there's someone who can read minds, but it's only negative things. Someone who can see the future, but it's only on people who are about to die. Someone who knows hypnosis, but is very irresponsible with it. And I thought, okay, well, there's this person is collecting them because it's like darkness as a physical person, and this darkness is trapped in this area, this high rise, and he's trying to collect all these people who have these little abilities because that will strengthen him or something like that. So that's kind of where this is how he collects them came about. Clippings is an epistolary novel. And if for those who don't know what that is, it's a novel written in non-traditional chapters. Like if you know Dracula is written in letters, Clippings is written in media communications, mostly newspaper articles, blog posts, emails, press releases, things like that. So, like the newspaper articles will tell the story of what happened. Then you got the bloggers who are kind of the conspiracy theorists that might know they think they know what's going on, and but it's all following the same story of this serial killer who's in the area, and they're trying to trying to figure out. So you have press releases from the police department and emails between the people that work at the paper about where they're going to go next with the stories, because now they feel like the people who are reporting this are being threatened. And so, yeah, because I kind of always wanted to write something that was a little off the beaten track from your traditional novels. And I think I saw a movie that was something like this, and I can't remember what the name of the movie was, but it was filmed like you're seeing from camera angles, like not like maybe hidden cameras, but like cameras that are in somebody's house, and you're picking up the scene, or it's the video chats and things. The whole movie is that way. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. I wonder if I could do that with a book. And then I remember how Dracula was written in letters, and I thought that's a neat, interesting way to tell a story, to do non-traditional chapters. And so I came up with kind of this little murder mystery. I even used pictures of people, friends of mine. I actually put a call out and said, if you want to be in my book, let me know. And because I would assign characters to their picture. So, because you look at a newspaper article, you'll see a picture of somebody in there. Well, that's what I was able to do. So
great way to market that too.
Yeah.
Love that. All right, I think we're done with that part. All right, so we're going to bounce back over here, and let's see. You have something called the horseman virus.
I heard you say that. I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure
that one's not yours?
I don't think that one's mine. No, I don't have a horseman virus.
How much research do you do to make sure that horror feels uncomfortably real?
I do a lot of research on mostly, I don't say historical facts, because I want to make sure everything. I mean, history is scary, but I want to make sure, like I told you with Stokebridge, I wanted that town to have a feel of the mid 1970s, and if it has a feel of the mid 1970s, maybe people who were alive back then would be like, "Ooh, this is kind of scary," because I remember towns like this, and this is kind of kind of hit me a little differently. So I want the worlds to be somewhat real, but at the same time, I will take some liberties, like with like Welcome to Oblivion, which is it's kind of in whole different world kind of a thing. But for the most part, I want a lot of the normal things to stay normal.
Right.
I will look at historical things, and you know the Titanic sank in 1918 or whatever. I'm not going to change the year or change things like that. I'm going to make historical things accurate. Um, so I'm not going to have people living until they're 1,000 years old. Things that don't make sense, I guess, and without explaining it. But yeah, I just my research is basically on anytime I come up with something and I'm like, "Ooh, does this make sense? Is this right?" So you will probably never read anything by me where there is science involved, like real science, because I am not a science person. And I would not be able to explain anything scientific unless it is completely 100% made up.
Totally understandable. And
Yeah.
thank you for that. How do you keep violence meaningful instead of just loud?
I make I don't do gore for gore's sake. I have always been more about the suspense and the story. I have had a couple of very violent, gory scenes that I've written, and I can actually probably name them, but they are imperative to moving the story along. It's not just for shock value. Yes, I want to shock the readers, but I'm not going to use, just over the top gore, because I don't write splatterpunk, and I have no problem with anybody who likes that.
Mhm.
That's can be your taste. If you like extreme horror, that's
Right.
not what I'm into. I'm into more the suspense, thriller, um, storyline vibes, where there is a protagonist or more than one protagonist, and there is an antagonist or more than one antagonist, and you know which is which, usually early on. Sometimes it can be a surprise if I can keep people guessing for a little bit on that. Like with clippings, you can you figure out who the killer is, because it's not giving anything away. But I yeah, it's more about the storyline to me, because I think that can be even scarier, because you don't know where you don't not ne necessarily, some people can maybe, guess what's gonna happen, but if you
Right.
can't guess what's gonna happen, maybe you're a little more it's scarier not knowing where it's going than it is if it's all these, blood and guts kinda things.
Right, right. So, I had a question here. You kind of sort of already answered it, but the question at the front was, when a scene gets really dark, do you push harder or pull back and let the reader's imagination do the damage?
That really depends on the scene. There have been some scenes where it just needs to go a little darker, because I really want to press that this is a very serious scene and a very serious issue that the characters are in. And then there are other times when I will start getting dark, and then I will pull back a little bit, because it's not necessary to, like I said, it's not as necessary to see some of the violence that is, happening. Just knowing it's there, or so much not even really being able to see it, I think can sometimes be scary as well. Because you don't know, they find the dead people, but you didn't know what you did as the reader, you didn't see what happened. Well, what caused that? I think that you can be more frightening by not giving everything away.
If you had to strip your writing down to one essential strength, what would it be?
Storytelling, just telling the story from beginning to end. That's something I've really loved doing. I think I love creating characters, but sometimes I need to find ways to make the characters not so similar.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the actual storyline, I love coming up with different plots and different ideas for stories, whether they be standalone stories or series. I just love being I've always and that's since I was writing as a kid, always loved being able to come up with a new world that I can create. That's what I think probably my biggest strength is with writing.
What's one writing rule that you've broken that actually made your book better?
Oh my. I don't know, a writing rule that I've broken. Are there rules in writing? Are there really any rules?
Ah,
We're making if we're writing fiction, we're kinda making everything up as it goes along. Um, I I don't know. I don't know if there's any real rules that I don't follow the rules,
I love
because
this. I
I don't
love
really think I
this.
know of any rules other than
Right?
there are no rules.
Right?
You can write whatever you wanna write. Now, again, if you wanna publish it and let people read it, that's, again, your call, but,
Sure.
again, I don't see any way you can really say you're breaking any rules with your writing. I mean, I guess I don't even wanna say cross genres or changing I guess, changing your plot midway through or having all, kinds of plot holes and things like that. I try not to do any of that stuff. But, other than that, I really don't follow any rules I mean, I'll kill off a character that everyone loves. I will, uh, I will make situations tense and, maybe things you don't see coming and make you uncomfortable with some things. But yeah, I don't really see that there are too many rules when it comes to, fiction writing.
You have a writing partner, and here
Yes.
is her picture.
Mhm.
Let's see what her name is, and let's get an idea of how you meld the craft of writing with her.
Yeah, this is Carrie Jane, and Hell's Diner is her first publication, but like I said, she's been writing, I think, her whole life. I've known her for about 3.5 years now, and she's also a horror lover. She's also an actress. She's done some independent, work, and, we just kind of we talk about different horror stories, different horror that we've loved, and all the different kind of movies that we've enjoyed, and, I think she would send me some of her writing that she had done, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it really was very similar in style to mine. And when I suggested we do some of try to get this collection taken care of, so that she can be officially published for the first time, she just jumped on the idea. And her stories that are in Hell's Diner are brilliant. I mean, I will plug It Lurks as one of my favorite stories in that entire collection. It Lurks is kind of like I said, I think I mentioned it before. The old, you have the fears when you're a kid of, there's a monster in the basement.
Heck yeah!
Oh, that is what this story is. It is about a monster in the basement, and, it is so well written, and it is so creepy, and I mean, from beginning to end, it is such a great story. So, that is one if somebody if you get your hands on Hell's Diner, don't skip over It Lurks. It Lurks is so great. It's amazing.
Thank you very much. Go back over here and grab this last bit. I'm gonna move this over a little bit, and so it's not so scrunchy.
Yeah, there he is.
And who is this sweet animal?
That is Thor, the dog of thunder. I've had him for, gosh, how long has it been now? Little over 8 years now. He is my writing buddy, although he mostly just kind of, keeps me from writing sometimes because he demands attention. So, yeah. Yeah, he's a little stinker. We actually took him, to a book signing back in October. We went to a bookstore in Seymour, Indiana. It's called The Magic of Books. My friend Ashley Greathouse, who's also another indie horror author. She and her partners, had this bookstore, so we went to do a book signing there and brought him along, and even had, a little play card for him. Actually, I have it right here. just put this out there. If you see it, it says, "Meet the author's dog, Thor," and we had a bowl of little treats.
I love that.
He's actually sitting over here. He heard his name. He popped his head up.
Yes.
And people would give him a treat, and we just walk him around the store, and he had a great old time. And he's not a people person either, but he had some fun, I think. Yeah.
I love that. It's a very, very thoughtful photo, and it kind of gives the depth of where you are as a writer. And give us a little bit of insight in what you were thinking when you did that.
Well, I write a lot about, darkness and, the evil of people in my stories. And a lot of times when I'm writing at night, I will write with the lights off. The only light I have is coming from the laptop. And I think because I have that vibe, it gives me, kind of puts me in the element. It puts me in the story. And with this one, I really love how this picture turned out, because it really, I think it gives that essence of what I'm thinking when I'm creating these stories.
And we're back to the beginning. All right. So let's see. I'm going to put you back on the spotlight here. You can, you should, and if you're brave enough to start, you will. Another quote by Stephen King in his book. Talk a little bit about how that has helped you move forward as an author.
Well, I always, you see the term thrown around a lot. It's imposter syndrome. That's the term. And people say they get that because they feel like they're imposters, they're not real. And you have this in most creative industries, whether it's acting or, artistry or, writing, whatever. And I've never had that. I've never thought, I mean, I don't think I'm the greatest writer to ever write, but I know that I love doing it, and I love creating these worlds and creating these stories, and hearing what people might think about what I've created. I've never thought that I don't belong in, the writing club, or whatever you want to say. I've always thought, if you want to do it, you can do it. The only person that's stopping you is you. And so, and it's not, I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. And I've told people before, when it comes to writing, you just, if you're having trouble, just write out 100 words, write out a scene between two characters, have them talk to each other, just something, get your creativity out there. Just write the plot down, write anything. Because if you have a good idea and you really are committed to writing that book or writing the short story, whatever you're going to write, then you should do it. And you shouldn't have, come up with reasons not to, because you think, oh, nobody's going to like it. And that's actually a legitimate concern that people have, is anybody going to like this? Are they going to hate it? And there's a chance that, yes, people will. I've had some 1-star reviews. We all get them. It's kind of a rite of passage, I think. But do it because you love it more than anything. If you love telling stories, don't be afraid to start doing it. Even if you don't want anybody to read it at that time, maybe it'll take some time. Do it on your own pace, but don't be your own worst enemy. If you want to do it, then you can do it. And I think anybody can.
Before we close the coffin lid on this episode, what's next? New books, new worlds, new nightmares. What should
Oh.
readers be watching for?
Well, The Man on the Roof at Midnight, I just released the second novella. It's just an ebook right now. And then in March, I'm going to release the third ebook. But then soon after that, I'm going to put all three books together in a new paperback. It's just going to be The Man on the Roof at Midnight, a novella trilogy. So that'll be out in the spring. But my next novel will be out in October. It is entitled How to Survive a Serial Killer at Summer Camp. And it is going to be a mesh of like Friday the 13th meets Sleepaway Camp meets Scream. It's kind of my throwback nostalgia to the 80s and 90s horror. Because one of the big tropes back then was summer camps. That's where all the horror movies
Yeah.
took place, was at summer camp. So I've kind of got a book within a book. So I've got this main character who's a writer, and he was trying to come up with a new idea, and he started thinking, has there ever really been a serial killer or a slasher at a summer camp? And then he sees this documentary about something that happened 30 years ago at this camp. And he thought, ooh, what can I do with this? So um, I don't want to give too much of it away, but
All
yeah,
right.
he writes the book called How to Survive a Serial Killer at Summer Camp, and it becomes a hit. And he starts having book signings at summer camps. But then the original summer camp where this event happened decides to reopen, and the killer was never caught from 30 years ago. So I guess you can kind of see that this is a bad thing waiting to happen. But it's gonna add it's horror, it's slasher, it's got some humor in it. It's got some I don't what do you call them, but a lot of the what you've seen in horror movies over the years. Just I don't want to. It's not slapstick, but it kind of makes fun of some of the old slashers of the 80s and 90s, but at the same time being a legitimate horror story, because this is,
Any
this is like happening at this summer camp and stuff. But yeah, it's been something I've wanted to write for a while. This particular idea was recent, but I've always wanted to write kind of this nostalgia type of 80s slasher style. It's not gonna be taking place in the 80s. It's gonna be in present time, but something that happened 30 years ago is what predicated what's happening in the real time.
what's the blah 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 blah. What's the best place for people to follow you and fall down the rabbit hole?
I have so many social medias, but I also have a website, which you see it there at the bottom, ericwoodsauthor.com. You can see you can find all kinds of stuff about me on my website. I write blogs. I do Indie Author of the Month, where I feature other indie authors. I do indie author book reviews. Sometimes I'll write blogs. I need to get back on that. I need to do some new ones there, but there are several stories in there. You can buy my books from there as well. But there's also, I'm on Instagram. It's at Eric_Woods_author. Wish I could have gotten one big word, but that's the best way to find me on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok at Eric Woods Author, Facebook, the Eric Woods Author page. I'm on Threads, I think Blue Sky, which I don't really use much because it doesn't really take off. I'm on Goodreads. So if you can find me on Goodreads and follow kind of what I read and some of the things that are coming out, and my Amazon page, of course, that's where you can buy pretty much everything. And I do have some books on Barnes and Noble's website as well.
Eric Woods, thank you for hanging out in the dark with us tonight.
Thank
To
you.
everyone listening, support indie horror, read
Yes.
the dangerous stuff, and remember the scariest stories aren't about monsters, they're about people. This is Zombiepalooza Radio Live, and I'm Jackie Chin, and we'll see you on the other side of midnight.